The desert colony air was heavy with dust. Chains rattled as a small alien girl stumbled forward, her tiny feet struggling to keep up with the tall guards dragging her and her mother through the streets. The crowd whispered, some with pity, most with cold indifference. Slavers loved to make a show, and today was no different. The alien mother, tall and graceful even in chains, clutched her daughter close. Her blue skin glowed faintly in the harsh light, her silver hair tangled from days of captivity. Her daughter was no more than 5 years old, wide, innocent eyes filled with fear. They were forced onto a raised platform where slaves were displayed. The mother held the child tightly, trembling. The auctioneer laughed and shouted to the crowd, "Look here, a young one, and her mother willing to serve. Who will start the bidding?" Gasps and cheers echoed through the marketplace. Some shouted prices, others laughed cruelly. The child whimpered, hiding her face in her mother's chest. The mother raised her voice, desperate and shaking. "She is only 5, take me instead. Please, I beg you." Her words cut through the noise, raw and painful. But the crowd only laughed louder. To them it was a game, to her it was everything. In the corner of the marketplace, a man watched silently. He was human, tall, dressed in worn armor marked with scars of battle. His eyes were sharp, his jaw set. He had seen many cruel things in the galaxy, but something about this scene made his blood boil. He clenched his fists, debating. He had no reason to step in, no reward waiting for him. Yet the child's trembling shoulders, the mother's broken plea, it stirred something deep inside him. The auctioneer pulled the child forward, ignoring the mother's cries. The little girl cried out, "Mama," her voice shaking. The mother tried to pull her back, but was struck down by a guard. She fell to her knees, coughing, blood on her lips. Still she reached out with trembling hands. "Take me, not her," she begged again. The crowd jeered, shouting higher bids for the child. To them a child meant years of service, a valuable prize. The mother's life meant nothing. The human stepped closer now, his boots crunching against the sand. The guards noticed him, eyeing him with suspicion. But he kept walking, his hand brushing against the hilt of the blade at his side. The mother looked up and froze, her eyes locking on his. She did not know him, but for a heartbeat she felt something. Hope. The human spoke at last, his voice low but steady. "Release them." The crowd went silent, then erupted in laughter. The auctioneer sneered. "And who are you to give orders, Outlander? Do you have the coin to bid, or just a death wish?" The human's jaw tightened. "I said release them," he repeated, louder this time. The guard stepped forward, grinning, eager for a fight. The mother's heart pounded, torn between fear and disbelief. Could this stranger really mean to save them? Or was he another cruel master who wanted the child for himself? The little girl clung tighter to her mother, whispering softly, "Mama, is he here to help?" The mother could not answer, her throat closed with fear. The guards moved in, raising their weapons. The crowd cheered for blood, expecting the human to be cut down quickly. But he did not flinch, his hand rested firmly on his blade, his eyes never leaving the guards. The air grew tense, heavy. The mother whispered a silent prayer, holding her daughter close. She had begged the stars for a miracle. Now one stood before her, in human form. The first clash was seconds away. And in that moment, everything in the colony shifted. For the first time, someone had defied the slavers. For the first time, a human's voice carried more weight than gold. The crowd leaned forward, breath held. Would this man survive? Or would his bones join the many who had tried and failed before him? The mother's plea still echoed in the air, a desperate cry. "She is only 5, take me instead." But now, the answer was no longer in her hands. It was in his. The human drew his blade, ready to face the storm. The crowd's laughter echoed like thunder in the open marketplace. Alien voices shouted insults, mocking the lone human who dared to step against the slavers. The guards, armored in crude iron and armed with long blades, circled him with cruel grins. They had seen humans before, weak wanderers or desperate traitors. But none had ever stood in front of a slaver's platform and demanded freedom for a prize. The alien mother still knelt on the rough stone floor, clutching her daughter close. Her eyes locked on the man, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak. She had begged to be taken instead of her child. She had screamed until her voice broke. But no one had answered, no one had cared. Now this human stood before them, and the fire in his eyes was not like the laughter of the crowd. It was steady, sharp, and dangerous. She whispered to her daughter, "Stay quiet, stay close," her voice breaking with every word. The auctioneer raised his hands to silence the crowd, his sharp teeth gleaming in the dim light. "So, the human thinks he can play hero," he sneered. "You think you can buy them with words, stranger? Or do you plan to pay in blood?" The human's voice carried across the platform, cold and steady. "I plan to pay with steel, if I must." The crowd roared again, some cheering, some jeering, all eager for the violence about to unfold. The first guard lunged forward, his blade flashing in the harsh light. The human sidestepped smoothly, faster than the guard expected. His own blade swept low, striking with precision. The guard fell hard. A cry of pain silenced as the dust swallowed him. Gasps echoed through the market. The second guard snarled and attacked, but the human met him head-on. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying. The sound rang out sharp against the stone walls. The little girl buried her face in her mother's chest, shaking with fear. The mother's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break free. This man, this stranger, he was fighting for them. Two more guards rushed in, thinking to overwhelm him. But the human moved with ruthless efficiency, his blade cutting arcs of light through the air. He fought not with wild fury, but with control, like someone who had seen too many battles. Blood stained the sand, and the laughter of the crowd turned into uneasy murmurs. This was not going the way they had expected. The auctioneer's smile faltered, his greedy eyes narrowing as he realized his spectacle might collapse into chaos. The mother lifted her head, her voice trembling but stronger now. "Why are you doing this, human? Why for us?" Her words reached him between clashes. He did not look back at her, his eyes fixed on the enemies closing in. "Because no child should beg for mercy, not while I still breathe," he said, his tone sharp as steel. The mother's breath caught, her daughter's wide eyes turned toward him in awe. No one had ever spoken like that, not in this cursed place. The guards regrouped, forming a tight ring around him. Their leader, a hulking brute with dark armor, growled orders in a guttural tone. "Cut him down, make an example." The human shifted his stance, blade steady, sweat running down his brow, but his grip firm. The crowd pressed closer, eager to see blood spill. Yet there was a strange shift now, whispers moving among the onlookers. Some were no longer laughing. Some watched with a flicker of something else, respect, or even hope. The auctioneer slammed his staff against the stone, furious. "You dare challenge the chains of this market? You dare insult the will of the slavers?" The human's eyes flashed with anger. "I dare," he said simply, and with that word, he lunged forward. The ring of guards closed around him, weapons clashing, the air filled with dust and sparks. The sound of steel on steel drowned the jeers of the crowd. The mother held her daughter tighter, praying that this storm of violence would not take him too. Minutes stretched like hours as the fight raged. The human struck with precision, cutting down one guard after another. But he was only one man, and their numbers seemed endless. The mother's heart ached with every blow, torn between despair and hope. If he fell, she and her daughter would suffer worse than before. But if he won, maybe, just maybe, they could see the stars as free souls again. The little girl peeked from her mother's embrace, her small voice barely a whisper. "Mama, he is strong. Maybe he can save us." Tears stung the mother's eyes. She kissed her daughter's hair and whispered back, "Pray he does, child, pray he does." The fight reached its breaking point. The human stood bloodied but unbroken, his enemies scattered on the ground. Only the hulking leader remained, his massive blade gleaming in the sun. The crowd held its breath as the two faced each other. One human, one monster of a guard. The mother's plea still echoed in the air. "She is only 5, take me instead." But now, the fate of both mother and child hung in the balance of this final duel. The marketplace had fallen silent. Dust hung in the air, and the bodies of the fallen guards lay scattered on the stone floor. All eyes were locked on the human and the hulking slaver who now stepped forward. He was twice the size of the human, his skin a deep shade of iron gray, tusks jutting from his jaw, his armor covered in scars of past victories. This was no ordinary guard. This was a champion, the one the slavers used to crush any hope of rebellion. The alien mother held her daughter close, her arms trembling. Her lips moved in silent prayers, though she did not know if the stars still listened. She had begged to be taken instead, but now her plea had transformed into something else entirely. She prayed this human, this stranger, would not fall. For if he did, everything would be lost. The slaver champion raised his massive blade high, its jagged edge catching the sunlight. The crowd erupted with cheers, convinced this fight would end quickly. The auctioneer grinned again, his confidence returning. Yes, crush the outlander, break him into dust, he shouted. The human's face was calm, his blade steady in his hand. He had fought many battles, but this was different. This was not for glory, not for coin, not for survival alone. This was for a mother and her child who had no one else. The champion charged, his heavy steps shaking the wooden platform. He swung his blade down with the force of a storm. The human rolled aside, the strike smashing into the ground, sending shards of wood flying. The crowd roared, half in excitement, half in shock. The human countered with a quick slash, but the champion's armor deflected the blow. The mother gasped, clutching her daughter tighter. The child buried her face in her chest, whispering, "Mama, is he going to lose?" The mother pressed her lips to the child's head, her voice breaking. "No, he will not, he cannot." The battle raged on, every strike a thunderclap. The champion swung again. The human dodged narrowly, his blade sparking against steel. The human's movements were faster, sharper, but the brute's strength was overwhelming. One mistake, one misstep, and it would end. Sweat dripped down the human's brow, his muscles strained, but his eyes never lost focus. He remembered the words he had spoken before. No child should beg for mercy, not while I still breathe. Those words drove him forward, giving him strength he did not know he still carried. The champion slammed his fist into the human's chest, sending him staggering back. The crowd cheered wildly, certain the human was finished. But he steadied himself, coughing, blood on his lips. Still he raised his blade, refusing to fall. The mother's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing with every second. The little girl peeked again, her small voice trembling. "He is still standing, Mama. He is still fighting." The champion growled, frustrated. He had ended countless fights with one strike, but this human refused to break. He raised his blade again, roaring in rage. This time the human stepped forward instead of back. He ducked under the swing, slashing across the champion's leg. The brute howled, stumbling for the first time. The crowd gasped in disbelief, their cheers faltering into silence. The auctioneer shouted angrily, "Kill him, finish him now." The human pressed his attack, striking again and again. Each blow aimed at the weak points in the armor. His blade cut through straps, scraping flesh. The champion staggered, roaring in pain and fury. But he still swung wildly, his strength enough to kill with one hit. The human dodged narrowly each time, his movements growing more desperate. The mother could barely breathe, tears streamed down her face. She whispered, "Please, stars, please let him live, please let him win." The champion gathered all his strength for one final strike. He raised his blade high, both hands gripping the hilt. The air itself seemed to shiver with the force behind it. The human steadied himself, waiting, timing. As the blade came down, he rolled forward, driving his own blade deep into the champion's side. The brute roared, twisting in agony, his blade crashing uselessly into the ground. The human pulled free and struck again, this time across the chest. The champion stumbled back, dropping his weapon, blood pouring from his wounds. The crowd erupted in chaos, some screaming, some fleeing, others stunned into silence. The giant slaver fell to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. The human stood before him, battered but unbroken. With one final strike, he ended the duel. The champion collapsed onto the platform, the ground shaking under his weight. Silence. The marketplace froze, thousands of eyes staring in disbelief. A single human had done what no one else had dared. He had defied the slavers and won. The mother stared at him, her heart trembling. She could not believe what she had seen. Her daughter whispered softly, almost in awe, "Mama, he saved us." The mother nodded, tears streaming. "Yes, child, he saved us, but the fight is not over yet." Because even as the crowd reeled in shock, the slavers were not finished. More guards rushed in from every street, blades drawn, snarling with rage. The auctioneer screamed orders, his voice shrill and furious. Kill the human, kill the woman, kill the child, leave no trace of this insult. The human tightened his grip on his blade, blood dripping from his wounds, but his eyes steady. The mother clutched her daughter close, rising to her feet. The fight had only just begun. The slaver champion's body still lay heavy on the platform, his blood soaking into the dust. The crowd, moments ago roaring with bloodlust, had fallen into uneasy silence. Fear rippled through them, whispers rising like wind through dry leaves. One human had killed their strongest warrior, and now nothing felt certain. But the auctioneer was not ready to surrender. His face twisted in rage, his voice shrill as he screamed. Seize them, all of them. No survivors. Make the humans' death slow. Dozens of armed guards poured in from every corner, their armor clanking, blades and spears flashing in the sunlight. The mother gasped, pulling her daughter close, her body shaking. She whispered, "Hold on to me. Do not let go." Her daughter nodded, her little fingers gripping tight. The human stood tall, battered but unbroken. His blade dripped with blood. His chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. He knew he could not fight them all, not with the mother and child trapped at his side. Survival meant escape, and escape meant speed. He turned his head just enough to meet the mother's eyes. "Run when I tell you. Do not look back," he said. She swallowed hard, nodding without hesitation, though fear burned in her eyes. The guards charged, their boots pounding like thunder. The human slashed at the first who came close, buying precious seconds. He kicked over a wooden cart, sending fruit and baskets flying into the dust. The crowd scattered in panic, opening gaps in the mob. "Now!" he barked, and the mother obeyed. She ran with her daughter through the chaos, weaving between stalls and frightened bystanders. The human followed, cutting down any who blocked their path. Screams filled the market as the slavers tried to close the circle. The mother's breath came fast and shallow, every step a fight against fear. Her daughter stumbled, but she caught her, lifting the child into her arms. The human's voice rang behind them. "Keep moving, don't stop." Stalls toppled as they pushed through, goods and debris scattering across the ground. Arrows whistled past them, slamming into walls and carts. One struck close enough to graze the mother's arm, but she did not slow. Her child clung to her neck, crying softly, "Mama, I'm scared." The mother kissed her hair, whispering, I know, but we must keep going." They darted into a narrow alley, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. The walls rose high on both sides, shadows stretching across the ground. The human's boots pounded close behind, his blade flashing red in the dim light. "Faster," he urged, his tone sharp but steady. The mother pushed forward, her legs burning, her heart pounding. Every corner they turned brought hope of escape, but also danger of ambush. The alley spilled out into a wider street, but their path was blocked. More guards rushed in from the far end, snarling and ready to strike. The mother froze, clutching her child tighter. Her breath caught, despair pressing down like a weight. "We're trapped," she whispered. The human stepped past her, his blade raised. "Not yet," he growled. He charged forward, meeting the guards head-on. His strikes were swift and brutal, each one a desperate attempt to carve a path. The mother watched with wide eyes as he cut through them. But there were too many, and every second brought more. The slavers' shouts echoed down the streets, calling reinforcements. The mother backed into the shadows, shielding her child as the fight raged. She whispered, "Stay small, stay quiet, don't let go." Her daughter nodded, tears streaking down her face, but silent now. The human pushed two guards aside and shouted back, "Move, now take the left passage." The mother ran, clutching her child, darting into a smaller side street. The human followed, his blade keeping the enemy at bay. They raced through twisting corridors, their footsteps echoing. But the sound of pursuit never faded. The slavers were everywhere, their voices like a tide closing in. Finally, they turned into a dead end. A tall stone wall rose in front of them, too high to climb while carrying a child. The mother's knees weakened, despair clawing at her heart. She pressed her daughter close, whispering, I'm so sorry." The child buried her face in her shoulder, trembling. The human slammed his fist against the wall, his jaw clenched. "Damn it," he muttered, scanning for another way. The guard's shadows stretched into the alley as they closed in. Dozens of them, blades gleaming, eyes filled with hate. The mother looked at the human, her eyes wet with tears. "Why did you do this? You could have left us. You could have lived," she whispered. He met her gaze, his eyes burning with fire. "I told you already. No child should beg for mercy while I still breathe." The mother's breath caught, her heart torn between terror and hope. He raised his blade once more, stepping forward to meet the storm. Behind him, the mother held her child, her whispered prayers mixing with the sound of steel. The alley shook with the clash of battle. The fight was not finished, not yet. The alley was narrow, the high stone walls rising like prison bars on both sides. The mother held her daughter tightly, her back pressed against the cold wall. Before them, the slaver guards filled the entrance, their faces twisted with fury, blades gleaming under the pale light. The auctioneer's shrill voice carried down the alley. "No mercy. Tear them apart. Leave the human's body in pieces." The child buried her face in her mother's shoulder, trembling so hard her tiny frame shook with every breath. The mother's heart ached. She kissed the child's head and whispered, "It's all right, little one. I am here. I will not let them take you." But deep inside, she felt despair creeping like ice. The human stood tall in front of them, his armor torn, blood dripping from cuts along his arms and face. His blade was steady in his grip, though his body screamed with exhaustion. He had fought through the marketplace, fought through the alleys, and now stood against impossible odds. The mother whispered, her voice shaking, "You should go. Human, they will kill you if you stay. Leave us, save yourself." But the human did not turn, did not move away. His voice was low, firm, unshaken. "I will not leave. They will go through me before they touch either of you." The guards sneered, spreading out, their leader snarling. "You are one man, human, one blade. Against many, you cannot win." The human's eyes burned with defiance, his shoulders squared. "I don't need to win. I only need to stand." The mother's breath caught, her chest tightening. No one had ever spoken such words for her. No one had ever chosen her life or her daughter's over their own. Her tears spilled freely now, not just of fear, but of something else, something like hope. The first guard charged, his spear aimed straight for the human's chest. The human moved swiftly, deflecting the strike and driving his blade across the guard's side. The alien collapsed, and the human braced for the next. They came in waves, snarling, shouting, their weapons flashing like fire in the shadows. The human met them head-on, each strike of his blade filled with raw determination. The alley rang with the sound of steel and cries of pain. The mother could do nothing but watch, her arms wrapped tightly around her daughter. Every clash of weapons made her flinch. Every cry of pain sent fear into her heart. Yet the human did not falter, even as his body weakened. He stood as a wall between death and the child in her arms. The guards shouted angrily, realizing brute force was not enough. They tried to circle, tried to slip past him toward the mother and child. But the human moved with desperation, blocking, slashing, refusing to give an inch. His voice rang out, sharp and unyielding. "You want them, you'll have to step over my corpse first." The mother's eyes widened, her tears blurring her vision. She whispered, "Why? Why would you risk all this for us?" The human's answer came through gritted teeth as he struck another guard down. "Because I've seen too many innocents die, because no child should live in chains, because someone has to fight, and today, it's me." The words hit her like a blade to the heart. This stranger, this human, was not fighting for reward, not for glory, but simply because it was right. And in that moment, she felt something stir deep inside her chest, something she thought long dead. Hope. The slaver leader pushed forward now, his massive frame forcing the smaller guards aside. His blade gleamed, his eyes locked on the human. "You've caused enough trouble, Outlander. Now you die." He swung with terrible strength, and the human barely blocked, the force sending him crashing back against the wall. Blood ran down his arm, his knees buckled, but still he rose again, blade in hand. The mother gasped, holding her child tighter, whispering, "Stay strong. He is still fighting. He will not fall." The little girl looked up with wide, tearful eyes, whispering softly, "Mama, he is protecting us. He is our shield." The human lunged again, striking with a desperate roar. His blade met the leader's, sparks flying. The clash shook the narrow alley, echoing like thunder. The guards hesitated, unsure, for in the human's eyes they saw no fear. The alley was nah. The alley shook with the clash of steel. The human's blade rang against the leader's massive weapon, sparks flying into the dust-filled air. The slaver guards pressed forward like a flood, their snarls echoing between the high stone walls. Yet still the human stood, battered and bleeding, his body trembling from exhaustion, but his spirit unbroken. The mother clutched her daughter against her chest, her back pressed to the wall. Her eyes never left the human, every strike of his blade burning into her soul. He was one man, one stranger, yet he fought like a storm. For her child, for hope she had long forgotten. The leader roared, swinging down with monstrous strength. The human blocked, but the force sent him crashing to his knees, his blade scraping across the stone. The guards laughed, their cruel voices filling the alley. "It's over, human, you cannot fight forever." But the human rose again, blood running down his face, his eyes blazing with defiance. "As long as I stand, it's not over," he growled. The mother's heart ached at those words. Tears stung her eyes. She whispered softly to her daughter, "Look, child, look and remember, this is what courage looks like." The little girl nodded, clinging tighter, whispering, "He won't let them take us, Mama." The slaver leader snarled, raising his blade again for the killing strike. But before it could fall, a voice rang out from the crowd that had gathered at the alley mouth. "No more." The words were soft, yet they cut through the noise like a blade. An older alien, scarred from years of labor, stepped forward, holding a broken tool in his hands. He looked at the human, then at the mother and her child, and something inside him broke free. "No more chains," he shouted, his voice shaking. "We've suffered enough." The guards turned in shock, snarling at the interruption. But more voices joined him, low at first, then rising. "No more. No more." One by one, the crowd of slaves and onlookers pushed forward, their eyes blazing with something they had buried for too long. Hope. The human staggered to his feet, his blade steady again. The leader glared at the growing rebellion, snarling in fury. "Silence them. Kill them all," he ordered. But hesitation rippled through the guards. For the first time, they were outnumbered. For the first time, the crowd was no longer afraid. A young alien woman hurled a stone, striking one guard across the face. Another grabbed a fallen spear, swinging wildly. Chaos erupted, the crowd surging forward with desperate strength. The slavers tried to hold them back, but the tide had turned. Their cruelty had planted fear for years, but today, that fear had snapped. The human moved with renewed fire, striking down another guard, his blade flashing in the dim light. He fought not alone now, but with the strength of a rising rebellion at his back. The mother watched in awe, her heart pounding. This was no longer just a fight to save her child. It was the spark of something greater. The leader roared in rage, pushing through the chaos, his eyes fixed on the human. "You caused this, Outlander, you will die for it." Their blades clashed again, steel screaming against steel. The human staggered, but every time he fell, he rose again. He was not fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for them all. The mother felt the weight of her daughter in her arms, the warmth of her trembling body. Her tears fell freely as she whispered, "We are not alone anymore." Her daughter looked at her with wide eyes, whispering, "Mama, they're fighting too. They're fighting for us." The rebellion spread through the colony like fire. Slavers who once held power now found themselves hunted in the very streets they had ruled. The sound of chains breaking echoed across the stone alleys. And at the heart of it all stood the human, blade in hand, refusing to fall. The leader struck again, his strength shaking the ground. The human blocked, teeth gritted, muscles screaming. With a final cry, he drove his blade forward, cutting deep into the leader's side. The brute staggered, eyes wide with shock, before collapsing to the ground. The crowd roared, their voices like thunder. The slaver's champion was dead, and with him, their fear. The mother clutched her daughter, falling to her knees in relief. She whispered over and over, "We are safe. We are safe." The little girl held her face, tears mixing with dust. Mama, he saved us. The human saved us. The mother looked up at the man, his figure standing tall despite his wounds. And for the first time in years, she felt hope bloom inside her chest. The fight was not finished. The colony still burned with chaos. But the tide had turned. The human stand had lit a fire that could not be put out. The galaxy would remember this day. The day one human's choice became the spark of freedom. The night air was heavy with smoke. The colony burned, flames licking at the sky as the rebellion spread from street to street. The slavers who once ruled with fear now fled like hunted beasts. Chains clattered as prisoners broke free, their voices rising in cries of triumph. But at the heart of it all stood the human, his blade stained, his armor torn, his body trembling but unbroken. The alien mother clutched her daughter close, kneeling on the cracked stone. She could hardly believe the sight before her eyes. This one man, this stranger, had turned despair into hope. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "We are alive, child. We are free." Her daughter pressed her face into her chest, whispering back, "Because of him, Mama, because of the human." The human staggered forward, exhaustion weighing on every step. He looked at them, his eyes tired but steady. "Come, we cannot stay here. The fire will spread, and more will come," he said. The mother nodded quickly, rising to her feet with the child in her arms. Together they moved through the broken alleys, stepping over fallen guards and shattered chains. The sounds of battle still echoed. Slaves armed with stolen weapons fought their masters, their cries filling the night. The mother watched them with wide eyes, her heart swelling with something she had not felt in years. Courage. She looked at the human, walking just ahead, every step firm despite his wounds. She whispered softly, "They fight because of you." The human shook his head, his voice low. "No, they fight because they were ready. They just needed a spark." They reached the edge of the colony, where the desert stretched wide under the stars. The wind carried the scent of dust and fire. The mother set her daughter down gently, the little girl clutching her hand. The human leaned against a stone wall, his breath ragged, blood dripping from a wound along his side. "You are hurt," the mother said, stepping closer. He gave a faint smile. "I've been hurt before." But his legs wavered, his body weary beyond measure. The mother reached out, steadying him, her eyes filled with tears. "You could have left us. You could have walked away. Why risk everything for us?" The human looked at her, his voice quiet but strong. "Because no child should grow up in chains. Because no mother should beg for her child's life while monsters laugh. Because someone has to stand. And today it was me." Her tears spilled freely now, falling onto the dusty ground. She knelt before him, bowing her head. "Then know this, human, you are no stranger to us anymore. You are family." Her daughter slipped her small hand into his, her voice soft but sure. "You saved me. You saved Mama. You are my hero." The human's throat tightened. He was no hero, not in his own eyes, just a man who refused to look away. But in their eyes, in the eyes of those who had seen him fight, he had become something more. A symbol, a protector, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, humanity burned bright. Behind them, the colony roared with chaos, but also with freedom. Chains shattered, fires spread, and voices rose in defiance. The slavers would never again hold this place the way they had. The rebellion was alive, and it would spread. The galaxy would remember this night. The night when one human turned a mother's desperate plea into a battle cry. The mother rose again, holding her daughter close. She looked at the human with gratitude shining in her eyes. "Where will you go now?" she asked softly. The human glanced at the stars, his gaze distant. "Wherever I am needed," he answered, his voice steady. The mother nodded, though her heart ached at the thought of parting. She whispered, "Then may the stars guide you, and may you never walk alone." The little girl tugged at his hand, her eyes wide and innocent. "Will we see you again?" she asked. The human knelt, his tired smile softening his face. "Perhaps one day, little one. But remember this, you are free now, live, grow, and never forget that you are worth fighting for." The girl threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tight. The human froze for a moment, then gently returned the embrace, his heart heavy yet warm. As dawn broke, Light spilled across the desert. The mother and child stood together, watching as the human walked toward the horizon. Each step slow but steady, his figure growing smaller against the rising sun. The mother's tears fell again, but this time they were not only of sorrow. They were of hope, for she knew the truth now. In a galaxy of cruelty, humanity carried something rare: the strength to fight, the courage to stand, the compassion to save. The little girl squeezed her mother's hand, whispering softly, "Mama, he changed everything." The mother nodded, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, child, he did, and because of him, we will never be the same." And so the story of one human's stand would be carried across the stars. A tale of defiance, of sacrifice, of hope reborn. The day when a mother begged for her daughter's life, and a human answered with steel. The day when chains broke and freedom began.